Hi, George here. I thought today we'd do something a little bit more interesting, and that is to remove the person over here left-hand side and leave the girl on the right-hand side. Now, because he's taking up so much of the picture, you can't do the normal stuff of clone stamp or content aware fill. There's nothing to work with over here. So we'll do something a little bit differently. I have a picture over here, this background picture, which matches the same kind of flowers in this image. We're going to try slipping this in behind the girl to cover up the guy over here on the left-hand side. Let's now see how this works out. First thing I want to do is to separate the girl onto her own layer so that we can then slip that other picture in behind. And for that, we'll start with a basic lasso tool here. It's not that critical up around the top. It's only going to be critical over here where it overlaps his shirt right in here. We'll see how we can handle that. And we'll come around down here, across the bottom, and up over this side. Again, this side's not critical. I'm not worrying about this at all. There we go. Let's see if we can clean this up down on this side. I'll zoom in on that. Just like that. Back to our selection tool, and let's try the refine edge and see if we can get this to be a lot better than it is. This may take some fussing around with the final image to get this thing working properly, but I mostly want to get rid of that white that's in there. Now, if you pull from the outside in like this, it may take a few pulls, but it should finally grab that and remove that. There it is beginning to go right now. There we go. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, hold the space bar down to move the image, and let's continue on down here and clean this up as much as we can. Again, very complicated image, won't be perfect, but we'll see how well we can do. Let's get some right back in here. There we go. And while we're here, let's just go ahead and clean up this edge right along in here. Just work along and work in little short strokes. There we go. I'm doing this because, of course, we're putting the picture in behind, and I want to blend it in as well as we can. And continue to work around to this side. I'm using that overlay here, the red overlay, just works out well for me. It's easy for me to see exactly what's going on in here. You can really see that edge very well. Okay, just finish this off right down along this edge. We're just about done. And catch the bottom bit right down through here. And right in there. And there we go. That's about the best we can do with that. Let's take this out to a new layer with layer mask, choose OK. There we go. That also gives us a background safety at the same time, in case we need that. And let's set this to fit screen again. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's now bring in that other picture. I'll just float that right here. If you don't have floating windows, go up to Edit, come down to Preferences and General, and it's that checkbox right there. That's the one you want to have checked. And choose OK. I can now just grab the background, drag it in here. There we go. It comes in above. I'll pull it underneath. And there's that same kind of background. Now, it's not perfect. A couple things. First, I'm going to give this a bit of a gradient and try to control the softening in here so we have it more in focus at the bottom and less in focus at the top. And that'll match the original a lot better. It's really out of focus, as you can see back in there, but it gets more focused down towards the front. Let's see if we can mimic that. So let's duplicate this layer, right click and duplicate layer. Choose OK, so I have two copies now. We're going to blur the top one out, and then we'll control the visibility to the layer underneath. Okay, let's go up here to Filter, come down to Blur and Gaussian Blur right here. And I'll pull this way up because the other one was really blurred out, kind of like that, I think, is pretty close. Something along those lines, maybe a little less blur be better, actually. Notice how it's a little bit off over here, right-hand side. I can adjust the size just a bit on that to help that out. There we go. There's our blurring effect. See how close we are. That's pretty close. You may want to punch the contrast up a little bit, but let's now go ahead and see if we can control this blur. And for that, I'll put a layer mask in here. Now, black hides and white shows. We want to hide the bottom of this layer and show the top of the layer. So use a black, and let's go here to the gradient tool and click into the gradient and go here to the first one. That is your foreground to background, and that's what I want. And it's on linear right down here. And then come just off the screen down below. Hold the shift key down so you get a perfectly vertical movement like that. And you see what happens in here, where it's black on the gradient, it goes clear, and where it's white, it is opaque. Now that's not the gradient that I want. I need to be a bit more controlled on that. Let's just make our image size smaller so we have more control. Back to our tool. I'll come outside here someplace. Let's just pull up like that and see how well that does. Not too bad. Maybe a little bit more like this. And that's looking better, more realistic. Let's just double check that. And I think that's actually pretty close. We have some of the same bushes in front here, and that's fine. And everything else is looking pretty good. I just want to tweak the values now in here. And that's the values of these images. Notice we have some brightness in the original in here, kind of in the brightness in there. And we had some brightness on our background image right in here. I just want to punch that up a little bit, get a bit more of that brightness in there. So for that, I'll use an adjustment layer, new adjustment layer, and we'll do levels. Now in here, I want this to affect both layers underneath. So I'm not going to check that checkbox, choose OK. We don't need that bottom layer. That actually is not being used. I'll just hide that one. And let's increase the lightness in here just a little bit and increase our contrast just a little bit. Just a little bit of tweaking in here, not too much, trying to balance out the overall look of that image. Okay, I think that is pretty successful. There we go. So we've removed that person left-hand side, and we did it in a different way this time by putting a different picture in the background, but the same picture, the same kind of flowers as we had in the original. Now you can come down and you can tweak this a little bit on this layer by adjusting your opacity if you want to. A little less opacity shows you more of that background. More opacity shows you less. You can always come back in and adjust the gradient if you want to. But I think that works out pretty well. Let's just go up here to this layer. I'm going to show and hide the layer mask. Just disable. There's the original and enable. And there we go. Removed that person with just a clever trick hidden here with a matching background that didn't have a person in it. And if you like this video, my channel is completely fan supported. So if you want to help out and help me keep on making videos here on YouTube, consider purchasing my complete training course for Photoshop Elements. There's a link for that right down there in the description. Or you can support me through Patreon. And I want to thank my current Patreon supporters, Eternity Mine, Steve Jazz, and a new supporter, Bad Wolf. And a special thanks to Mr. Moonpie, who just signed on as a booster. Thank you all. Your support is really greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time.